Welcome to Philosopher and the Monk. And we have a special guest today, Robert Saltzman, Dr. Robert Saltzman. How are you, Robert?
Well, I'm doing well today. Thank you, James.
Great seeing you. And that's RJ.
Nice to
Uh,
meet you, Robert.
Nice to meet you, RJ. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Okay.
So today, Robert, I was telling a friend who was going to be on. He asked who was going to be the guest, and what is Robert like? And I tried to describe you. Um, I hope this doesn't sound bad. I think it'll sound fine. I said you're like the James Randi of this non-duality and waking up business, because you're a straight shooter. You don't suffer fools gladly, and you try to weed out some of these Neo-Advaita guys, and does that sound wrong? You're all
Well,
about the
no,
experience.
it actually rings a couple of bells, but it's ironic because I just saw a comment on my Depending on No Thing group where someone said that he didn't suffer fools gladly, but I'm notable for doing so.
Uh,
And
that's
there's another. But James Randi rings a bell. I was a big fan of his back in the day. I was one of the early subscribers to the Skeptical Inquirer magazine
Oh,
and
wow.
BSI and all that stuff. He
Yeah.
caught my attention. He was a great old guy, wonderful.
Yes. And he was. I could tell my story quick with Randy. I wrote him as a child, maybe 14 years old, just a fan. And 6 months later, he wrote me back and sent me some interviews with him and a nice picture. And then I was doing sleight of hand. RJ was playing drums. We've been friends since our teens, and always big skeptics. And that book he wrote against the magic of Uri Geller, exposing Uri Geller. He had his address on the back, and I said, let me take a chance and ask for lessons. And I asked him for magic lessons. And he said, I can't come to you, but you can come to me out in New Jersey. I was on Long Island. And that was the start. My older brother took me. I was only about 15 at the time. And Randy opened his door and took me in and spent 6 hours with us. And it was just an amazing day. And I never understood why he always helped me. And one day I asked, and he said, when he was a child, he was starving, and he said starving in his own style and trying to do his own thing. And a neighbor always let him come by the house for dinner when he was really hungry. And Randy one day went up to the man. The man was reading the paper, and he said, one day, sir, I'll repay you. And the man didn't lower the paper, and he just said, don't pay me back. I don't need it. Give it to others. And Randy has been so kind to Rich too, to RJ also. And by 19, I was living at the house as his apprentice, and people like Carl Sagan and Isaac Asimov were his friends. And it was just an incredible journey. RJ and I were card carrying materialists, card carrying atheist skeptics for most of our lives. So that's the Randy.
James Randi is deceased now a couple of years ago. Am I right?
Yeah, during COVID, I think it was October 2020, he passed
Yeah.
in his 90s. So he had a great run.
Yeah, he was wonderful. I like that thing he did with Peter Popoff where he busted.
Yes, I
Yeah.
was there. I was there for that. I was living there during the time, and he said, all right, get up. We're going to pick up garbage today. And it was at the Popoff. Popoff would rent these big arenas and do his healings, but he threw his garbage out. So Randy got a truck, and we threw the garbage. We took all the garbage back to Randy's house and dumped it on the patio, and went through Popoff's notes and went through and we found that the healing cards that the people signed were that they were supposedly praying over and anointing with oil. Had the only oil Randy said that was on the card was McDonald's French fry oil from lunch, and they would just shred everything, and just take the money. And we even found a note from Popoff's wife Elizabeth to Popoff, where now he's supposed to be actually healing people. And during it, she wrote a little note, because she walked out on stage and handed him a note, and it said, "All right, let's get this over. I'm ready for dinner." And that was something.
Well, so for people who don't know that story, Peter Popoff was one of these evangelicists.
Mhm.
Early, and he was like a miracle worker. He'd have people in the audience, and he seemed to know all kinds of things about them, where the pain was and everything. Then he'd heal them and do the Jesus thing and touch them in the forehead.
And he even knew their addresses. He'd
Yeah,
say,
he knew a lot about them. Well, James Randi went in there with one of these radio scanners that just goes through all the frequencies, and heard his wife coaching him on the details, which she had gleaned from questioning these people in advance, and these cards that they filled out to be prayed over. It had all this info on it.
right. And he was wearing a little hearing aid, a man who was healing the deaf and the blind was wearing a tiny hearing aid.
So he was one of these people who enriched themselves on other people's pain, playing on other people's suffering and pain. So if there's a connection between me and Randy, I kind of like to bust people in the spirituality, the non-duality end of it. Something like a teal swan, for example, someone like that.
Yes.
Yes, and just point out to people that we have to find our own minds, not have someone take their mind and put it inside your head. I mean, we already have a head. We don't need someone else's on top of it. All their ideas.
And RJ would say he's had a big problem with these Neo-Advaita people, right, RJ?
Yeah, it's kind of annoying.
Well, say more about that.
It doesn't. It seems like for the beginner, it's so confusing and not understandable that it's almost a waste of time to even speak that way to certain people on their certain level of path, where they are on the path. And what I always say is those words that they say is that kind of reserved for the Zen master speaking to the student after years and years and years and years of practice. Then those words could enlighten a student. I'm not so. I mean, I know. I'm sure it will happen once in a while this way, but for the majority of it, I think it's maybe even hurting people.
RJ likes to say that a lot of the people just seem to be parroting the words, and
that too. That the teachers definitely.
And Robert says it's like a hypnosis, right, Robert?
Spirituality is a hypnotic trance. I mean, it has all the aspects of hypnosis. It's repetitious. To begin with, the first stage is stop thinking. Your thinking is hurting you. When you stop thinking, then you'll wake up, is the first move. Well, that's like disarming someone totally. We need to think about everything and be critical, of course. So the first move is listen to me and accept this uncritically. Look into my eyes. Okay, so that'd be the first move, see? And then after that, there's the whole belief setup. It's just so all-encompassing that it's just assumed. It's assumed, for example, that there's someone in me, inside this body is a Robert. That's an assumption. They even say so. I'm living in a meat suit. Well, there's not in my view, there's not a myself in this body. This body is myself, along with feelings, thoughts, perceptions, all experience, we only know bodily. If we're entirely anesthetized, so we don't get any of these signals from the body to the brain anymore, we don't experience anything. And then we come back, and that was just like a missing piece in time. When I had a surgical operation, I don't remember anything that happened, but the people who were not anesthetized could tell me everything that happened in the room. But for me, the experience was just 1 minute I'm counting backwards as the anesthetist is medicating me. And the next thing, I'm waking up in a strange room in a bed I've never been in before with a lot of pain. In between, nothing. So the idea that you don't need your body and brain to be functioning in order to exist is just foolish on the face of it. There's no justification for it. It's just a belief. And it's a belief that is very satisfying to a lot of people because it seems to remove the sting of death. And that makes it really easy to sell. Very Catholic Church, look at all the gold and silver they've amassed over the years.
Right.
Yes, by selling a promise. You follow this path, you'll never die. You'll be in heaven with Jesus. So that's what I see in contemporary spiritual scene. Promises are made, but the promises can't be kept. And that's all I'm saying. What I've been telling people is years ago, I found myself awake in the way that I understand that term, and the way that I understand other people's testimonies about having awakened. I had a similar experience. Everyone's different, but I had one. And that was 35 years ago, so it's ancient history.
Was that the one in the kitchen?
Well, I ended up in the kitchen, yeah, sitting on the kitchen floor for 2 days naked, laughing while my wife was a bit worried. But I came back, and I've lived I've lived a life since then. Whether it's normal or not, has to be open to.
And can you say you were naked of concepts and clothes, or just it was just clothes?
No, what really happened is that I understood in a flash, and it's hard to explain what this was like. I can't. There aren't any words for it. But I became aware that I wasn't making any of this, including myself. It was all just here. There was no effort. All the effort just went out of it entirely.
It's like the end of authorship in a way,
Yes.
right?
It's what they call no doer in the literature. That's what's called.
And then all three of us wrote books about the end of authorship.
Okay. I don't know anything about you.
It's just funny.
Whenever people ask to speak with me or interview me, I avoid checking into anything about them because I just rather hear it from the person directly.
That's great. Yeah.
So if you wrote a book, great. Maybe I can pick up on it one of these days.
Sure. We'll be happy to send them.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, James wrote 3 books. I just wrote a tiny little story. But one more thing about the Neo-Advaita. I often see this is just a happening, which I agree with all that. But like, what about the instructions to like help people start a process to awaken? Like, I don't see any of that in the Neo. It's just, let's do it quick, right here, right now. You can wake up or not. And it seems like some people need a little help, and they don't seem to offer any of that. Am I wrong on that?
Well, I don't really know about your initial assumption that Advaita is something positive. I don't really think it is. I think it's a form of delusional religion, very similar to Western religions.
Robert, can I ask you, is there a distinction between Advaita Vedanta and this Neo-Advaita? Do you see it?
Well, sure there is. The Neo-Advaita simply says it's here now, so you don't have to do anything about it. In Vedanta,
Right.
you have to make an effort. You
There you
meditate,
go.
and it's a process.
Yeah.
But there's a big assumption behind traditional Hindu Advaita, which I don't buy, which is that God, it's called Brahman. I don't buy God at all.
I don't think the Buddha liked that one either.
Well, he wouldn't, as I understand it. I'm not an expert on Buddhism, but as I understand it, he just wouldn't answer the question. People persisted in asking him the question, and he just wouldn't go there.
That's
which,
right.
Which is a nice move, actually, and let people figure it. Yeah, that's.
No metaphysics, right?
See, I just don't buy the God concept or the Brahman concept. I don't know that the universe is conscious. I do not know that. That's an idea. See, that's a popular idea, but I don't see any evidence for it.
Robert, can I ask you, what is your feeling on everything being one or unitary or whole? Ultimate reality being whole and unitary.
Well, I don't know anything about ultimate reality. I have no way of knowing that, and neither does anyone else, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, like, can ultimate reality consist of separate things? I would say no.
For all I know, this is the ultimate reality.
Well, it is.
Well,
in a certain
now it's consisting of many things. I've got a coffee cup in my hand, which is not me. My impressions of it are, my impressions.
Yes.
Yes. But my impressions are not the cup. I know it's believed that there is a belief that we are dreaming the world, we're creating the whole world, but I don't know that.
How about half and half? How about we half receive sense data and we half manifest the world? So, like Schopenhauer and idealism would say, we receive sense data when we perceive the world, and now take this internal cognitive time and space and cause structure that's inherent to every human being, and add that to the sense data, and there's experience. Are you down with that a little?
So,
you like that?
Well, I think that needs a lot of criticism. We humans, our senses don't define reality. A hummingbird sees an entirely different world. Why isn't the hummingbird?
I said experience, not reality, though.
Well, but
our experiences are generated by a combination of subject object, and then would be experience. But just on that alone, if you go down the line and infer from there, reality would have to be whole, because it's us that are breaking up the oneness with our time and space cognitive internal ability that then projects the world. For Schopenhauer and idealism is only in the mind. The physical world exists only in the mind.
Yeah,
it's not.
But I don't know that, and I don't think Schopenhauer did either.
Well, I think for it to be not the case would be just incredibly internally inconsistent and logically incoherent, in his system.
That's right.
But I think what he's trying to say, which I like about him, is he's saying, look, there's one thing. We don't know what it is. Some people call it God, some people call it Brahman, some people call it whatever, ultimate reality. But there's one thing. And the second thing is just how it appears to us. So there's one. Is there a word you like on ultimate reality? Is there a word? Do you like a word?
I just don't go to the.
I think Robert states with reality, right?
Yeah. Okay. So you have ultimate reality is all that exists, and everything else is how that ultimate reality appears to us when we perceive it. So I would side with Schopenhauer on that position, and I was just wondering if that fits your system as well, Robert. That's all.
I
If
understand.
not, no big deal. Yeah.
Well, it's idealism. It's philosophical idealism. It's not just
Yes,
Schopenhauer. There's plenty of people
that's right. That's
in,
correct. That's correct.
in that world. That's not my view.
Not your
It's not my viewpoint. I'm not
right, but
an.
does it
I'm
does
not.
it fit? Does it fit with your viewpoint at all? Is what my question was.
No.
So there's
So I think Robert, in the book, it's pretty fresh on my mind. You talk about the end of the system in a way, right? Going beyond any system to that pure experience.
When I had the meltdown, and and I was reconstructing myself, which is what you have to do, what I had to do after the melting down that much. I did a lot of reading. I had not done a lot of reading in spiritual, some, the usual, but I hadn't gone into it deeply. When I was doing all that, I kept asking myself, what do I know and how do I know it? And the more I persisted with that question, the less I knew, until I really came to a place of all I really know is that I seem to exist.
that's right.
Well, but if that's all you really know, then why do you assume that there's some greater reality? How do you know that? On what basis? On what authority?
You have no authority. It's just that when you look at the materialist position, it's pretty much untenable. I mean, we do have quantum physics pointing and saying there is no object without a subject, and that still is not refuted for 130 years.
Well,
Of
quantum physics is can't really put my finger on the adequate word. It's a way of regarding physics. It's not a definition of reality. It's mathematics.
right, and their findings are consistent. It's always been when you observe the physical world,
Mhm.
when you don't observe the physical world, there's no matter. It's
Well, that's not that's one version. That's one.
that's science. That's the scientific conclusions after 130 years of quantum physics, and we're still arguing about it. Like we still have materialists saying we don't know yet. Well, maybe there's a way that it's happening we don't know of. You know,
I think
that's
our,
fair.
I think that you're conflating two separate things. You're taking materialism as one position and idealism as the other. And you're saying that mathematics rules out the materialist position so that
Well,
the idealistic position of Schopenhauer or whoever had to be correct. And what I'm saying,
it's not. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's more parsimonious. If you use Occam's razor, which one, idealism or materialism, is more parsimonious? I would definitely say idealism. But I'm not saying I know what ultimate reality is. I'm just saying like that tenet from Buddha and Plato and Kant and Schopenhauer of if everything's in motion, and everything is in motion. I mean, there's
well,
photons.
from your point of view, it is.
Name one thing that's solid and stable.
I don't know anything about what's in motion and what isn't. I only know what I know as an
No,
individual.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that answer. I'm just saying, over thousands of years of the greatest minds ever, trying to find something solid and permanent, no one's done it ever. And based on that fact, how did separation and motion, how does it exist? It can only exist because there must be an underlying permanent reality giving rise to this impermanent
From a
temporary.
human,
So
from
it's
a
just
human,
logic. You know what I mean? Like
well,
just logic. It's not the truth. I'm not saying I know the ultimate truth. I'm just saying, from a logical standpoint, how could there be separation and motion from separation and motion? It has to be something whole and permanent. That's the idea. And I was, logically that makes sense or no? Not really.
you want me to reply?
I mean, this is something Plato and Buddha and Kant, have set forward that there's no way we could have things, parts moving, and it come from just other parts moving. It's like everything's in relation to one another, but what is it in relation to? One another? Like, so you have temporary existence must be in relation to something permanent. Anyway, I know I'm going on and on. I saw your talk with Tim Freak. And I really enjoyed it a lot. You guys spoke about
Oh, wait,
subjects I love.
I was
I-
the one that wrote Tim, Robert.
Oh, yes,
I-
Jane.
Yeah, when you were having a discussion of how much you liked his video with Rupert Spira, I saw that and I quickly wrote Tim and said, get over to the Saltzman page.
Uh-huh.
They're talking about, and then I think someone else set it up, a lady, but I was a little catalyst there.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's good to hear. So, RJ, the thing is, I'm not, I don't really debate, and I don't really use logic in the way that you're using it. So we're kind of at cross purposes here.
Well, I don't want to debate with you, and I just want to. I like you a lot. I've seen you a few times, and your video with Tim Freak, everything you guys discussed, I like discussing as well. And
Okay.
it's a pleasure to have you. I was just trying to make a connection with you and see if we had something in common, something solid in common. I'm sure we do.
Yeah. Well, so let me reply to what you said. I listened carefully to what you. Now I'll reply. All of these things that you were pointing out are in the minds of human beings. But the human being is not necessarily the arbiter of reality in the universe.
I agree.
So, yes, you can talk logically and say everything's always in motion. No one's ever found anything that isn't in motion. But that doesn't mean that there's nothing. That doesn't mean that everything's moving. That means that as human beings, we perceive a universe in which everything is moving. But what if the universe was just like a slice of bread? This has been proposed by some physicist, I don't remember who, an important person, I don't remember who. What if the universe is just like a slice of bread? And wherever you cut into it, that's your experience. If you cut into it in 2022, in June, you'll have this. If you cut into it in the 16th century, you'll have something else. And nothing's moving except the observer. But the universe is not moving. It existed forever. It is what it is. It doesn't change. It doesn't evolve. Nothing moves except from our point of view. I'm not saying that's the way it is. I'm saying, okay. So my main critique of the entire spectrum of chit chat about ultimate matters is we are not situated to access that in any way that I know. I'm not the greatest. I'm not the greatest mind that ever existed. You said there are these great minds, but I'm not bad. And in my view, I don't know. If someone else claims to know, show me the evidence. No one has. Logic is not evidence. Logic is not evidence.
Can we say this? No one can say what ultimate reality is. Me, Schopenhauer, Plato, Kant, anybody.
RJ, no one can even say there is such a thing.
That's true. But what there is one thing we could say that maybe we could eliminate certain things that are not ultimate reality, that cannot be ultimate reality. And that's that's my deal.
Okay.
You know,
Give me an example.
so if there's really basically three propositions on the table, which would be idealism, materialism, and panpsychism. Like if you investigate all three, you see there's less problems with idealism, and there's more problems with materialism and panpsychism. And I'm not saying that that's the proof, but I'm saying if you just infer, if you take your experience and that the only thing you know is that you haven't an experience, like if you relate that to physical matter, like I don't see any connection at all with that. So I mean, what I'm saying is I can start to eliminate certain avenues and paths. That's the wrong path. And I think that's the best the human mind can do. You're right. The human being is incapable, and that's why the other thing about idealism is they say to know what reality is, you can't use your reason and your mind. It's beyond that. That's the beauty of idealism, is that they're saying there's a certain limit, and then enlightenment is beyond that limit. So you have to learn to stop your thoughts. You have to learn how to really know. When you had your experiences in the kitchen, you can't really maybe say what it was, but you did experience yourself, ultimate reality, the present moment. You experienced something that was not with the mind. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
I wouldn't say that.
You wouldn't say you experienced something beyond the mind, beyond the regular mind that you use every day?
Yes, I would not say that.
Oh, okay. So go ahead. I'll just listen to you then. The mind was involved, but you went. Okay.
If I had been anesthetized with no access to ordinary mind, I would not have had that experience.
Right.
So therefore, ordinary mind is necessary to have experiences. That's what ordinary mind is, an experience.
True. So, what I'm trying to say is, you had an experience. Some people call it out of body. Some people call it whatever they call it. You had an experience that wasn't ordinary. And I agree with you. The mind is involved. So the only way you could even speak about that event happening, even describing it, is because your mind had to be involved. If your mind wasn't involved in some way, you wouldn't be able to repeat it and tell us what happened. So yes, I agree with you. The mind, the regular, ordinary mind, is involved, but I'm not sure how much so. I mean, I think maybe you have an experience and your finite mind remembers it in some way. It was there, it was present, and it experienced it and remembered it, but I'm not sure. James, you have anything on that with when you experience beyond the mind, but your mind remembers it?
Yeah, well, I think it's like a boundary dissolving. I think what Robert described was it's the same happened here and with you.
I like boundary. That's excellent.
Yeah, the boundary dissolved between yourself and everything. So I don't think Robert throws. I might be misinterpreting. He doesn't throw the thoughts out and the perceptions and that is yourself. But now you see that there's no boundary, but you between yourself and everything. Is that right, Robert?
If you look at a tree, I'm a photographer. I study these things often for hours at a time. In my work, I look at my photographs, I'm working on them, tremendous detail. You can see that tree, you can describe it. If you walk right up to the tree and touch it, you can feel the roughness of the bark. Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The question is, where is that roughness? Is it in the bark or is it in your mind?
Mind.
Now, I don't have an answer to that question. And because I don't ask that question of myself. I don't ask myself questions unless I have some hope of getting an answer. So this materialism versus idealism thing that everybody's caught up in, I don't think about it. I'm not interested in it. That's what I told Tim. It's not my deal.
See, for the idealist, it would be the bark of the tree and the feeling of the bark on the tree are both in consciousness. But you know what? Let's go. Let's move. Since we're not like clicking on that on these points, let's move on to something else because I really enjoy Robert. The things I've seen of you in the past. I know you had great reviews on the book called 10,000 Things, and I'm assuming that's somewhat related or comes from like Lao Tzu in a way.
I think is it Dogen? I think I'm not sure.
Or Dogen or Lao Tzu.
Well, well, the 10,000 things, I don't know the origin of it, but it's a very ancient way of saying the universe.
Yes, yes.
It means all and everything. The 10,000 thing. 10,000 was a number of completion. And the ancients thought that's the biggest number there is.
Right.
There isn't anything. Yes. So when you said
Great title of the book. I love that title.
Yeah. So, yeah, the book, the experience with the book has been amazing. I my good friend Dr. Robert Hall was still alive in those days, and he was the first reader, and he said, "My God, this thing is amazing." He said, "This is going to become a spiritual classic, like Alan Watts or Krishnamurti." And I was overwhelmed by that. I said, "Come on, Robert, because I know you love me, you're being kind, but maybe it's okay, but it's not." But it's turned now. I'm very shocked because that's 5 years ago, and the book's all over the world. It's just being translated into its fourth language, Dutch,
Wow.
and publishers, and it's amazing. I mean, I wasn't expecting this. I wasn't aiming at it. It wasn't my goal or ambition at all. It's just kind of a happening. About 10 years ago, a couple of people encouraged me. I'd remained silent about my experiences. I didn't really feel like discussing it with anyone, but I did with Robert. He was a Buddhist, kind of a well-known Buddhist guy. He was one of the founders of the Spirit Rock community in Marin County, and he moved down here to Todos Santos, and we met and hit it off and started meeting once a week to talk about Buddhism because I wanted to know more about it from an expert. He had read the entire canon and knew everything.
Wow.
So we talked for a long time, a few years. And then he said, you really need to get out there and discuss this with other people, not just me. And I said, what am I supposed to do? Rent a hall and sit on the stage and give speeches? And that's when I got the idea of kind of writing. And then John Troy, another dear friend, got me on Facebook. And I started writing there, and the book came out of that experience. And now I hear from people every day, sometimes many people in one day, telling me this book stopped my search. I was hung up for years, and now I'm not. It's all these beautiful
That's
things.
beautiful.
I'm like this old. I'm 77 years old. I mean, this is a nice happening to happen when you're supposed to be like boring and.
Yeah.
And that's why we started this podcast, just to put things out there, interview people that can bring some kind of peace to people who are suffering, or especially the unnecessary suffering, that.
Well, that's the point, James. That's exactly it. If you take someone who's tortured by this ambition to be enlightened,
Right.
and then you tell them, look, it's not all that's cracked up to be. You're still here. You're still going to die. You don't win. You don't win. You just it's really just like taking a step back and just seeing everything with a bigger perspective. But it doesn't answer every question. It doesn't get you off the karmic wheel. None of that stuff. You're still you're just an ordinary citizen, no matter what you believe or think or know.
I always like to say we already won. We're here. That's a big message in your book, that it's all about the present moment, and
Oh, yeah.
don't miss that for some kind of concept of enlightenment that isn't true.
So that's tragic. If you're always living for the future and always thinking what I don't have now but hope to have later, what you do have now right on the table in front of you can't be appreciated.
Mm.
You know?
RJ and I got hung up on the emptiness for a while. We were so stuck on just staying in and meditating so much that we had to come back to the. I read in every book that you have to come back to the world. You have to come back and integrate this into the now. Not just anyone could be happy in a cave.
Well, yeah. You can spend your entire life theorizing about what reality is. And meanwhile, your heart is beating 60 or 70 or 80 times a minute, trying to pump blood through your veins. And no matter what the idealists say, RJ, I'm not at all convinced that that's unnecessary to being. I think it's necessary. In my view, it's necessary. If that makes me a materialist, well, okay. I know I'm not a materialist, but if people think, Robert, you're just speaking like a scientific materialism, well, a little.
Well,
RJ, you said something great yesterday about the body. Maybe you can go into that about what.
well, I know Schopenhauer would say that we all have like a twofold existence, and one is the one that we're connected to the body, and the second one is the one eye of the world which every creature sees through. And he would say that we have like a double identity. We have like
it's an aspect, right? Two aspects.
Yeah, so we're a human being, but we are also whatever the ultimate reality is. We're that too. And James, that's something I know you are 100% in line with.
Yeah.
Right? There's like a false self and a true self.
Yep.
You down with that?
I don't think Robert's down. I don't know if Robert's down with a full. I have this quote here, Robert, that you said. This I like a lot. There's a kind of teaching that takes you to a place where you don't have a system.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Fuck Schopenhauer. Really?
Yeah, all I'm saying is that.
No, fuck Schopenhauer. That's what I'm saying.
All I'm saying is,
Look, let me cut to the chase here, because that was a good question that you quoted me, and that's a good question. I just want to open the space so I can speak. Yes. I don't actually care what Schopenhauer said. He was just a guy like me. He had an experience like me. He sliced the world up the way he sliced it up, and that's it. It's over. He's dead.
all I'm saying, bro, is that the guy is got a good way of helping a beginner in their spiritual process. That's it. Because you wake up and you see that reality is not the world.
Yes, but RJ, if someone, I have this problem a little, so I'm kind of aware of it. If someone reads my work, my books, and then adopts those ideas, says, Robert really got it. He knows truth. He knows reality. They will be deceiving themselves. I'm just an ordinary person like everyone. Schopenhauer included.
All I'm saying is there's a guy who's able to.
Let me give a little speech, because you've talked a lot. Seriously, you keep interrupting me, which is okay, but it's disconcerting. Now I decided to cut to the chase. I appreciate what you're saying. Don't get insulted, but give me some space, and then I'll listen to you. Because especially on Zoom, it's very disconcerting to be interrupted. It cuts off the flow. Yes, thank you. I'll speak, and then you speak. It will go better that way.
He just gets excited. We get it, it's
Yeah,
just
I understand. I understand. No blame. Please understand.
no,
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 no judgment, no blame here. I
we
just
don't
want.
take anything personally.
Okay,
Not
well,
at all.
okay. So, what I am saying is, there's far too much reliance on authorities and having our way of thinking programmed by what so-called wise philosophers in the past said. But if you look into this, you can find wise philosophers from the past, authoritative ones, who say all kinds of different conflicting things. So, in my view, what we're really doing is finding someone who can underwrite or give authority to what we want to believe. And this is the confirmation bias. You read Schopenhauer, for example, and you say, yeah, idealism, that's cool, that's cool. I might read something else that's completely opposite and like that, and say, wow, this guy, whoever it is, really had it. John Paul Sartre, see, the existentialist, who would have thought Schopenhauer was full of shit, probably did. I don't know if he did or not. And then I'll say, you see, Sartre said that it's all...
Sartre believed the world was separate also.
Say it again?
I said Sartre also believed that the world was separate, that he was separate from the world.
Separate from the world?
Separate from the world. That he and the world were two different things.
Well, is that true?
Well, I don't know. Do you agree with Sartre on that?
I don't know enough about it.
Or I'm just saying, I like the guy Schopenhauer because he shows people that speak in a Western language, a nice way of. This is what I was trying to say. You're waking up spiritually. Your whole life, you were born like a Western person like everyone else. Culture, downloads, your beliefs. Okay, so you're acting a certain way in the world, just like everyone else. When you start to wake up, you start to go, you have a meditation night, and then the following day you go to work, and you start to see, you get caught up in the world again, and it's not like that. And all I'm saying is that Schopenhauer has a good way for the spiritual person waking up to say, oh, my eyes are deceiving me. They're really, like, it's not ultimate reality that things are separate. And that just helps the spiritual development. That's all I was trying to say with Schopenhauer. I'm not doing anything else. Like, I'm not saying he's an authoritarian. I'm not saying he's right. I'm just saying he's very helpful. Maybe I'm just saying that because he helped me.
I think so.
Maybe
that's
it's just me.
That's how I look at all of us.
Yeah. So I apologize if I tried to stick Schopenhauer down your throat, but yeah, he helped me, so I'm sure that's why I feel that way.
Well, I totally accept that. A couple of things to clarify. I don't consider myself a spiritual person to begin with. I would never say that. I think spirituality is a vast wasteland of delusion. I'm much more here and now than theorizing about what things are and aren't. I'm not that interested in it. As I said about the tree, I don't know if the tree is, I don't know if there's really a tree out there or if it's all mind. It could be either one or something else that I can't even imagine. And I have no way of making a decision. So I just live. I just get up in the morning and do what I'm going to do. I don't think about these things constantly.
Yeah.
When people ask me about them, then I'm forced to try to put something together. But spirituality is not my way of life. I'm not a meditator. I just get up in the morning and do what I do every day. And I understand that this brain and body are going to die probably pretty soon. And when that happens, most likely that'll be the end. I could be wrong. I have no way of knowing that, and either does anyone else, in my view. So all the chit chat about consciousness continues, the self never dies, blah, 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 is to me blah, blah, blah. And I just discount it. I don't listen to it. It has no effect on me. I'm not interested in it.
I think all three of us would agree that the individual, personal self at death will be gone.
Well, I don't know that.
I mean, I assume. I mean, the ego, whatever
I
the ego.
I assume, you see that that's exactly what I'm getting at. I would say take all the assumptions and say, I don't know this. It's only an idea in my mind that I enjoy, or it serves a self calming purpose, makes me feel less neurotic, whatever it is, so I like it. Those are our ideas and beliefs. They have no validity in an ultimate sense. None. They don't
Ro-
mean anything, in my
Robert,
view. This is
would
just
you say? Oh, sorry. Would you say
well,
that maybe all that other stuff gets in the way of having the experience that you had on the floor? That maybe all that stuff it gets in the way, or I
that's
don't know.
exactly what I say. I
So
say
that's
that's exactly what I say. I say that maybe Schopenhauer should have had a girlfriend. And he
I wish.
wouldn't have spent his time, so much time whipping up this stuff, because there's a lot more to life than what you think about ultimate reality. That's just some chit chat. It doesn't arrive anywhere and it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't. You don't know that, so it's ideas. It can't really do anything.
Okay. If you know, but if I'm saying if you know something's just an appearance or an image or a representation, it doesn't have a self-standing reality. It doesn't have independence. That does not. That will die. I don't know. No.
The world is representation. Is a good
Exactly.
it's a good idea. It's a philosophical idea. It's a good one. I like it. It's
Okay.
it's a fruitful thing to consider at a certain point. What I'm saying, this is just my personal confession, RJ. I'm not speaking truth. I'm just telling you how I experience things. I can read about world as representation. I can understand it on a physics level in the 21st century. Um, and then I can set it aside and eat my breakfast and say, boy, what a great egg. What a beautiful cup of coffee this is. And that will be much more satisfying personally to me. To me, this is how
No,
I
I
live.
understand. But like myself personally, I have read some passages from the world as will and representation, and it was transformative, life changing. It was truly transformative. I saw the world in a way I
There,
didn't before. That's all.
there you go. Okay, perfect.
It's,
Now I get messages from people about my books, and they say the exact same thing.
there
This
you
was
go.
this was the transformative experience. And what I say to these, when I write back to them, I say, look, this is a book. I'm glad it helped you, but it's not the be all and end all. It's just the way I see things.
Yeah, but what if what you wrote made someone see for the very first time in their entire life they were holding on to a false belief that was hurting them the whole time, and you said something or maybe a few things that clicked, and they saw the truth for the first time. Not that they experienced the truth, but they recognized the truth. And your book did that. What's wrong with that?
The thing that's wrong with it, well, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm happy if my work alleviates pain, that's good enough for me.
Or show someone the path. Like you put them on the path. They weren't on a path before, but after reading your book, they're really on a good path now.
I hope not.
Well, good path, bad path, whatever.
Well, the thing that was wrong with your statement, in my view, was the word truth. I don't have any truth. I don't even know what truth is, and I certainly don't have any to dispense. I have my point of view. One
I'm with you.
one human being's point of view. That's all I got. And that's all I'm ever going to have, in my view, in my opinion, in my experience. There is no objectivity. Doesn't
I'm with
exist.
you. There's no right. Okay, can we agree on that? There's no such thing as objectivity.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Robert, we're together.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to take that one.
My pleasure. I'm glad I found the key that would open the lock.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Jim's. I'm happy now.
I'd like to talk more about, like in Robert's book, RJ, I think you'll agree, Robert, maybe 75% of it is stripping away everything you're not. And then only a very little bit, and towards, I think it was the chapter maybe on permanence or after that, where you talk about, you don't give instruction, but you say, be quiet a little bit, right? Just that little bit of being quiet. Can you speak on that just a little bit tonight?
On being quiet?
Yeah. Can you speak on being quiet?
I speak on being quiet. Yeah, for me, the most beautiful times in life are when you just sit there and that's okay. And you're not planning the next thing. You're not wondering what we'll eat for lunch. You're not consulting your cell phone. None of that. You're just sitting there on the park bench and the air is blowing across your face and that's it. To me, that's it. All this chit chat, it gets in the way of simply being. And more primitive people are good at this. I've been around a lot of people who are uneducated and undeveloped in my earlier travels. Like I lived in a little Rasta community in the Caribbean for a few months with my wife and son. And nobody had read a book there. They didn't have books, and they disdained education. And they believed all this nonsense about Haile Selassie. And however, if you just sat on the ground with these people on a straw mat, which is what they did, it was such a peaceful, calm atmosphere. And it would bring you back to yourself. Not that they were telling you to meditate or telling you anything, just the vibe, just the vibe. Well, that's me. I'm kind of on the vibe. See, I just like to walk around. I'm not really a big thinker. People might have think I'm a big thinker because I write a lot of words and I'm a PhD. But
right.
But I don't walk around constructing these castles of intellect. I just don't. I don't have the taste for it. I like to look. I'm a photographer. I like to look at birds and trees and the ocean and all that. That's what I find fulfilling. But that won't get me to heaven. I'm going to die like everyone else, in my view. And I don't think that Krishnamurti's in heaven, although he was a good influence on me, or Alan Watts, or Schopenhauer. I think we're just all people. We, as Shakespeare said, we come out here and groove for a while and then we leave the stage. And the next people inhabit these roles, same role. There'll be a Robert with a different name in 10 years from now saying similar things when I can't do it anymore. Just like I'm here now and Alan Watts isn't. That's just how it goes. It's nothing to be proud of or ashamed of. It's nothing to cling to or be afraid of. It's just nothing. It's just empty. It's empty. See, it's empty. It's really empty. We fill it. We fill it with theories and arguments and sex and drugs and we fill it. When we stop filling it, even for 1 second, it's palpable. The emptiness. You know this. You've experienced it. You've experienced emptiness, right? Absolutely. Yes. You get a little bit of that, and then all the chit chat just sounds like noise.
I say that is the heaven. That is the heaven is the now. It's being in the moment.
Yes, and people talk about the now, but there isn't really a now. There's just
this.
Yes, I hate to do that because it sounds like one of these neo-idiots.
It does.
No, that's not exactly what I'm saying. I'm just saying we don't know what anything is. That's more, we don't know what anything is or isn't. We have no way of determining that. All I know is what I see, think, hear, and feel, and otherwise perceive. That is Robert. What if whatever else I have no, it's invisible. It's like dark matter. You can talk about it, but no one can see it. And that's all this chit chat that refers to dark matter that I can't see. I have no access to it. And that, I think the thing that helps people when they encounter my work is it gives them permission to not know,
Mm.
to not strive. That's the thing, the relaxation of simply saying, now is good enough. I don't need to know the next thing. I don't need to improve my meditation. I don't need to find out the next thing. I don't have to go to the next workshop. I don't need to read the next book. None of it. I'm here. I'm here. And see, that's what I want to say to anybody who's listening to this. It's good to talk about these things. I appreciate both of you guys. You have your experiences. It's great to hear about them. I mean that sincerely. However, there's something prior to all this, and it's here, always here. We don't notice it if we're caught up. If we're arguing, if I'm arguing with my wife, I'm not going to be aware of stillness. I'm going to be caught in the argument. That's the way it is for me. Other people I know disagree. I mean, I've actually had people say to me, Robert, oh, very good and well for you, but you're never going to get anywhere. In fact, I'll tell you this anecdote. When I wrote the 10,000 Things, it was supposed to be published by Non-Duality Press. In fact, Catherine Noyce, who is one of the owners of that press, encouraged me to write the book and told me, you write it, we'll publish it. Great. I got a publisher before I even write the book. This is beautiful. So I write the book, but it took me a long time. Well, no, a couple of years passed. I didn't write it. And then suddenly, I didn't have any real desire to labor in that way. I was doing other things. So, but then I decided, this is cool. I'm going to write a book. She'll publish it. So I write the book. I told her, I've got the book, Catherine. She said, oh, well, we just sold the press, but you can, to a bigger company, but you can send it to them and I'll give them a recommendation. Well, I sent it to them. Months passed, 6 months. Finally, I get a letter back. We loved the book. Everyone here loved it, but we're not going to publish it because when you get to the end, what do? There was no how-to in it. And so,
No, like I said, you only had that little bit about just relax and be quiet, but you weren't preaching. You just like a page. That was about it.
I have no method.
Hmm.
I have no method. I have no teaching. I'm not a spiritual teacher. I keep telling people that. I really, and they say, oh, well, you're the Uncalla. You see, you're saying you're not a spiritual teacher, but it's a spiritual teaching. No, it isn't. It's a true confession. I really don't know what to say to someone else to allow that person to drop it. I don't know.
So you do like and RJ is very fond of this, I think they call it via negativa, where you're taking away,
Yeah,
and
that's
what's left.
netty.
Yeah,
Not
we're
this.
big. Yeah.
That's what I was saying before.
Yeah, that's a very common theme in spiritual literature that's not spoken of much now because influencers, which is the new thing, have to have the product. Nothing is not a selling product. That's the problem. But like in the Heart Sutra, there is no nose, there is no not a nose. You see, that's how they point to nothing. It's not it doesn't exist, and it also does not exist.
Mm.
You can't put your finger on it. You certainly can't sell it to anyone. And my wife, Katanya, is a very important part of my life. She and I have been together for 45 years, and there's a lot of cross-fertilization of ideas. She's a very smart person. And keeps me on.
Is she an artist or?
She's a dancer.
Oh, okay.
Really good one. So,
Yeah.
So she and I were just talking the other night about how, like 5 years ago, I had this moment where all these people wanted a piece of me. And at that point, if I'd wanted to launch this career as an influencer on the internet, it would have been a snap. It just would have been a snap. And I started laughing and crying. And I said, I gave him the slip, baby. I gave him the slip. And I'm so glad I did, because here I am now, 5 years later. My time is my own. I don't have people attacking me all the time the way they started to do, because I'm not really saying anything.
Right.
It's great. And I don't have to perform. I don't have to be anything I'm not. I don't have to be cool. I can make a mess if I want to. I can say fuck Schopenhauer, which, I mean, whatever.
That's exactly what Randy would say. Randy didn't have the doctorate like you, but he quit high school on the last day with a perfect average. He took all the exams and wrote on them, "This is a premise I cannot support." Just turned them face down and walked out. And he would always say, because I don't have academic credentials, I don't have academic restrictions. And he can say, like you, give the finger to.
Yeah. Well, I don't have an academic career.
Right. You don't have to worry. Yeah.
No, I don't have to. I got the PhD because I wanted to practice psychotherapy. And that was like the ticket, the entrance card to being Dr. Saltzman. And I wanted to learn the things to be a therapist also. I mean, it wasn't just a credential, but I needed the credential to do my work.
Where are you? RJ's big with Carl Jung. Maybe that's something you can connect on. I don't know if you're a Jungian at all.
My dissertation was about the relationship between Jung and Freud and some other later psychologists. It's called Psychotherapy as Personal Confession. That's the title. And the idea there is that these psychological theories illustrate or treat the psychopathology of the author. So in other words, Jungian psychology is to deal with his hangups. Freud had to deal with his hangups. And they're not universal schemas that actually fit the human mind like a glove. They're more a description of Jungian psychology as a description of his experience, which was very magical and mystical and quasi-religious and all kinds of odd things happening and magical symbols. And Freud, on the other hand, was really big into cocaine and sex, and his psychology is more about "sock it to me, baby." And so, yeah, and so that's, yeah, I like Jung. I thought he was a great man, great mind, very brilliant, came up with some really good ideas. I'm one of the few people probably living who's read his complete works from cover to cover. It's 21 volumes. 21 volumes. I went to a therapy school that was a Jungian-based situation, so I got to study a lot of that stuff.
That's great. I've been just reading the Red Book a little bit.
Oh, to correct something I just said, that was outrageous. I'm not one of the few people who's read his books from cover to cover. There's probably several million people who've read them from cover. See, that's just like narcissism or something. It's some kind of weird wrinkle. And that's my point. Yes, I'm awake, but I can still be stupid.
We're not going to argue with that.
I prove that to myself. I prove that to myself every day. Very stupid.
Yeah, that's right. It's good to know that. It's relaxing. You don't
Yeah.
have you don't really have to be clever or mentally healthy all the time. It's okay to have problems. It's okay to be in pain. It's okay to cry and be sad. Oh, that's another critique of spirituality, by the way, since we're on this subject. Everybody's so happy all the time. They're blissed out. Oh, and the teachers are so blissed out, and they're just so happy. And if you realize that the universe is all this, you would be happy too. If only you could understand that. And I can explain it to you. Come to my next workshop, and I'll explain why I'm so happy.
Money.
Bullshit.
Charge money.
That's bullshit to me.
Yeah, it's terrible.
I hate that. I hate it.
Yeah.
It's the worst.
Robert, I like you talked about the myth of Sisyphus. Did you want to talk about that a little bit? Or
Sure.
that always, my whole life, I loved that. And you wrote exactly how I felt about it, about every day we get up and have to push that rock up the hill, knowing it's going to come down.
Okay, well, I like that. That's the final chapter of my second book, of Depending on Nothing.
Oh, right.
After going through this entire journey, the point is you still have to push the rock up the hill every day, and you're never going to get it to the top. It's going to roll back. No matter what you think you have figured out, maybe tomorrow it won't be figured out anymore. Or you'll say, wow, how could I have believed that yesterday? Or whatever it might be, and you'll just have to keep on doing this. Well, in the myth of Sisyphus, Camus wants us to feel happy. Was it Camus or Sartre?
Camus.
He wants us to feel happy because Sisyphus was happy, because he realized that when the rock rolled, it was very hard pushing the rock up and trying to get it to the top. When you just about got there, it would roll back down again. Well, he had just suffered, pushing, and then this tremendous disappointment. But then, and this is the happy part, he gets to walk back down the hill after the rock. And that's a downhill walk. It feels really good. You can cool off, and he's not pushing anything. So that's my experience. My experience,
right.
When you're on the downhill part, take it in, baby. Enjoy it, because you're going back to the other thing. You're not going to stop.
About he has to feel, he has to learn to like the sun on his back and feel that warmth, and that's all about being in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So that's a beautiful interpretation of the myth of Sisyphus.
Yes.
Really, in the Sisyphus story, he was being punished by the gods, and they didn't think he was going to have any fun. But he fooled them. He found a way to enjoy his fate.
And another great one that you mentioned, fate, the Amor Fati or Fati. Oh, you were going to say that?
I just was saying it.
That's funny because Robert writes about that in the book. I think it's in the 10,000 Things. And that was always something RJ and I loved about not only accept your fate, but love it.
Yeah, love your fate. Amor Fati.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and the other one is to remember your mortality. Those go together. In fact, one of my readers had asked me about, we had a meeting here a couple of years ago before COVID, and a bunch of my readers showed up down here. It was an impromptu thing, and I spoke for a few days about all these subjects.
That's great.
It was fun, and it was really fun to meet my readers face to face, in person. We had a great time. Well, anyway, one of the people, she asked me about Stoicism, and that's when I explained about loving your fate and remembering your death. And I was shocked and surprised. A year later, I saw her again, and she had tattooed them on her wrists.
Ah, that's great.
I'm so, well, I don't know how great it is. What if she changes her mind?
It's a good reminder.
That's fun.
And
Yeah.
what about Robert? I never asked. RJ and I have taken psychedelics. We call it astonishment medicine. Anything? I don't know if you've ever had the experience with that or these ego dissolvers.
A couple of times.
And in quiet or
Oh, I usually, yeah, I'm not a party guy. I
right.
wouldn't take some psychedelics and go to a rave
No.
or something. It's not
No.
not my idea of a good time. Yeah, I've had some amazing, beautiful experiences with mind-altering chemicals, and I think if that's approached seriously, it can be really helpful. Really
It
helpful.
worked for us. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely has been for me. I've had some great experiences. I used to eat peyote when I lived in New Mexico almost every day for about a
Wow.
year, in the morning, just a little at breakfast, and it just opened a certain. The day was different. The day
Yeah.
was different.
So
And
you
then,
were microdosing before they were talking about microdosing.
yeah, and actually, I was turned on to microdosing by. This was back in New York. This was in the '60s. A friend of mine. I was a student at Columbia, and a fellow student of mine was in the chemistry department, and he was a brilliant cat. He's dead now. He committed suicide
Mm.
at a young age. But Axel, he was an amazing, brilliant guy. He was so brilliant that he had designed. You had to to get the PhD. You had to design an experiment in science, in chemistry, and he designed one that worked, but it required all these chemicals that were usually forbidden. And the
Uh,
department had to sign off on it because he could use some of those same chemicals to fabricate LSD, and he was
uh,
Ah,
doing that at the same time. Well, anyway, he made these what he called vitamin pills for me, and it had a microdose of LSD and also some Ritalin. And I used to take those for a while too, every morning. Just
every morning.
yeah, they were very subtle. I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't like you couldn't go on the subway when you weren't the walls weren't moving or any of that
You're
LSD.
just a little sharper, a little
Uh,
clearer, and your days just a little bit better, I'd say, by the end, right?
I think just a kind of point of view, a shift in perspective, small. I was a school teacher at the time, um, and my students loved me because I used to say these outrageous things because they weren't supposed to say in school. They didn't know I was stoned. That only lasted a semester. I got fired.
That's great.
Yeah, the good old days, huh? That don't exist anymore and never did exist.
No.
Only our memories of them exist.
And Robert, but before we go, you would say that you can't teach this, but you would say be quiet. What would you say to the people that are listening, that are suffering?
If you're suffering, I think you really have to try to find a way of not suffering anymore that doesn't involve drugs and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
If you can do that, whatever it is, you're on the right track because it's important to find happiness. That's really important. I don't mean a permanent state of happiness. That doesn't exist in this world.
right.
You're going to have hard times. But if it's just hard day after day after day after day, then it's important to look. And that's why people say why don't you tell people to stop seeking? I don't tell people to stop seeking because you can't.
Right.
If I'm thirsty, I'm going to seek water. I mean, it's just natural. And if you're miserable, you're going to seek relief. That's just natural.
Yeah.
My advice is don't do it with drugs and alcohol because you'll end up probably addicted one way or another, and it'll be a disaster. I used to treat, when I had my psychotherapy practice, I used to treat people like that. It was very hard. So that's my advice. And it's not spiritual advice either. It's just down to earth, ordinary common sense. If you're unhappy, look for something else that you're not doing now, because what you're doing now isn't working.
Mm.
And it could be therapy, it could be, no.
Could be sitting on a bench in a park.
Yeah, it could. Yes, and the thing that's really good that I like is helping. Whether that's just doing the dishes so that my wife doesn't have to do them.
Oh, I love that in your book where that was such a nice. Yeah, you said just do this, do the dishes. Don't expect anyone to even notice, but just do them, and you're taking something off of another, and that does something for you.
Yes, it gets you out of this self-absorption
Yeah.
with I, me, and mine, as I, me, mine, as the Beatles used to sing. That's what's hanging everybody up. We're so focused on me and what I have and don't have and what I want and wish I had and don't have and all the rest of it. And it's a miserable state. It's
Something happened to me once. I was in the library, and there was this lady. She told me she had her knee was hurting so bad that morning. She was the circulation clerk, and her knee was so bad, and all she could think about was the knee. And then she's sitting on a stool, maybe around noon, and a man walks in who's not the most loved guy in the library. Like, he's a little cranky patron. He's not kind to them. And the circulation staff can really take the brunt of that, because they're right on the front line checking, telling you have a fine or something. And this man she noticed him walking over to the cafe in the library, and it must have been a cold day. Maybe he wanted a hot chocolate or a coffee, and he opened his wallet, and then he closed it, and no one saw, but she was watching. And in her mind, she said, am I really going to help this guy? Because they don't like him that much. But she got off the stool, she walked over, and she gave him the $1 for the coffee. And he lit up in a way that they hadn't seen him light up. And he thanked her and got the coffee. And hours later, her husband called and said, how's the knee? And she had forgotten about it, and it was feeling great. And she traced it back to that moment where maybe that's when that was an exchange, and she lost that little bit of the pain.
Yeah. I broke my back a few years ago. A serious injury. Fortunately, the fracture stopped just short of the spinal cord. If it had gone a little further, I might be paralyzed, the doc said.
Wow.
But I was in really bad pain for a long time. And I still have back pain. And sometimes it's pretty severe. No, it's not. No, I've had the severe pain was when I was the fracture. No, it's not. It's never severe. Sometimes it's enough so I don't feel like walking around. And I've noticed how much of that is tied into mood.
Mm.
The perception of pain is, if you're in mental pain, then these physical pains seem to be much worse and get into the forefront. And when you're not emotionally pain, if you're not in emotional pain, these pains, even though you may feel them, they just don't seem that important. It's almost like they're at a distance. I don't really have the adequate words to put this.
I like distance, like a spaciousness between.
Yeah, and I think that these people who focus on I am not the body, trying to have that experience, but I don't think that's a really good way to do it, because I think you are the body. The Buddha thought that too, by the way. People don't understand that. They want they want to be disembodied. But myself, according to the Buddhist canon, is the five skandhas, one of which is the body, another one is thoughts, another one is perceptions, and consciousness of all of that. That comes together and produces this sensation of a self. But you don't just get rid of that. You don't just cast that away. It arises, and the body is part of it. It's not the whole thing, but it's part of it. And well, I don't know how I got on that.
I think RJ will agree with that.
Yeah,
right,
I totally agree. Totally.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. It's been a pleasure speaking with both of you. Really a pleasure.
Yes. We're so glad you're out there doing your thing.
Yeah.
And it's I don't want to say miracle, but there's something special about meeting like this for the first time, and it was a wonderful thing. And hopefully, whoever's watching will pick up your book, because it's really. And the second book is things. What was it? I don't want to mess up the. Don't.
Depending, it's called Don't, which is
right. That's a depending on nothing. Depending on nothing.
On no thing.
No thing.
That is Dogen.
Oh, that's Dogen, right?
Well, what happened is that comes from maybe the Diamond Sutra, one of the sutras. Dogen was a illiterate woodcutter who would cut his wood in the forest and bring it into the city and deliver it to this hotel or cafe, whatever it was. And while he was delivering the wood, someone in there was reading out loud this sutra. And when Dogen heard the words, depending on no thing, find your own mind, he was immediately, so the story goes, enlightened.
I love that.
So depending on no thing, find your own mind. That's why I said fuck Schopenhauer and everything. We don't. It's okay to know about it, but we don't want to depend on it. We want to find,
even Schopenhauer would say that, Robert. He was very right, RJ. He was very big with don't just talk about others.
Oh, hell no.
I'm not trying to destroy Schopenhauer. He was
no. It's just all I believe is he's instrumental. He's helpful. He's just helpful. That's all. That's all I'm saying. To me.
Right on, brother.
But Robert, I'm a big fan of yours. I think you're very special. Not that there's anyone who's special, but a special person. And I wanted to make sure that. I was actually just trying hard earlier to connect with you and have something in common with you. So I hope you don't think there was anything between us that was out of line.
Of course not.
Okay, good. Because I would like to be friends in the future with you too.
That never would have occurred to me.
Good. All right. Good.
No, I thought you were expressing yourself. The only reason I cut you off is because in this, if we were in the same room, it wouldn't matter because there's visual. But here, it doesn't work. The way that Zoom works, at least for me.
See, if we were in a room together, I would probably put you in a headlock.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Out of love.
You just
like
think
a loving hug. That's all. That's it.
All right. Well, so it's been a great meeting, and thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for being here,
Thank you, Robert.
We appreciate you very much.
Bye, guys.